Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Basketball Maestros podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Today on the show, we are going to be talking about the first week of the NFL that kicked off last week. A lot of entertaining games last week, so that was fun to watch. So we'll give our thoughts about the NFL Week 1, and then we have this Bleacher Report article since it's kind of the dog days of the NBA season. We are about a little less than 3 weeks away from preseason, so in the meantime, we're going to be looking at this Bleacher Report article that talks about each NBA team's biggest questions. So we'll analyze their questions and give our thoughts on it, and hopefully that should take us to the end of our show today. So just kicking it off with NFL Week 1 that kicked off last week. Personal experience, it was a little bit of a letdown. Daniel and I and our friend Ryan, we usually gather for an NFL watching experience, and Sunday ticket was down for like an hour, 20-ish minutes, I want to say. So we were left scrambling, trying to figure out how to watch NFL games. But I was at a point where I was watching a Saints game on a YouTube live stream where they had a huge image of Saints Falcons scoreboard covering the screen, but it was just transparent enough where you can see the game and tell what was happening. But yeah, that was kind of horrendous, but it finally came back to life and we're able to watch a good amount of games. We can just start off with our personal teams and what we thought of their first game. So Daniel's a Raiders fan. I'm a Saints fan. I'll start off with Saints Falcons. That was a pretty horrendous game to watch. Heading into it, I expected to be an easy game for the Saints. Marcus Mariota, not the greatest quarterback in the world. The Falcons obviously are a very young team. They're rebuilding. I've seen people project them to be probably the worst team in football. And we were down 16 in the fourth quarter, and things were looking a little grim. But when I saw Jameis Winston march down the field in like 2-3 minutes, I had faith. And lo and behold, the Saints somehow pulled it out. Wasn't a pretty one. Granted, it was the Falcons, but a win's a win. Jarvis Landry looked pretty good in my eyes. When we first signed him, I asked my good old friend Lee Bedole about him. He said he was kind of washed, so didn't really know how to feel, but he had like 100+ receiving yards. Him and Jameis looked pretty good connecting together. Michael Thomas is kind of invisible most of the game, but ended up connecting a couple crucial passes, had 2 of our touchdowns in the game. So really great to see our offense click late game. We have a big test against the GOAT, Mr. Tom Brady, this week. So we'll see how that goes. That'll probably be a pretty good test, but first home game of the year. Overall thoughts of Saints Falcons, wasn't a great viewing experience, but Saints got it done. They pulled it out, and the Falcons blow another lead, which doesn't really surprise me, but want to know so far. Love to see it.
Yeah, so that was probably, that was a good game to watch. But then, Raiders came on at one. Um,
Uh,
and it was a very coming into it, it's gonna be a hard game. Chargers, they're kind of, everyone's hyping them up this season with respect. I mean, we have a great young QB in Herbert who popped off last year. Um, and has another year to show that he's here. Their defense got better somehow. I mean, you get Khalil Mack in a trade, and that's still stupid to me. And then, you get Derwin James back. You get, some players like Asante Samuel in their second year. So definitely, a scary group to play. But Raiders came out and looked strong on their first drive. Um,
Uh,
the one thing that you could really take away from this was just the positives that you see from the Derek Carr and Devontae Adams connection early on. It kind of seemed like they were the only two who could really get anything done. Um, and we open up and it was very close overall early on, but then you kind of got to see where the downfall of the Raiders could be this season, and that is our offensive line. I won't blame every interception that, many of you know, Derek Carr threw 3 interceptions. Um, I won't blame all of them on their offensive line, but you could definitely tell that it is just not up to par. I mean, it felt like Khalil Mack and Bosa were getting pressured damn near every play. Feel like Carr is getting hit every ball he let go of. So I mean, that's obviously our biggest problem right now, and everyone knew that, or at least people with brains knew that that'd be the problem with the Raiders. Um, and yeah, you could just see. I mean, we literally were switching out different combinations of offensive linemen like throughout the game, and it just makes it look like we're desperate. I feel like we just got to pick a five and stick with the five, unless one guy's really struggling. But um, it's really going to be interesting. I can see us already bringing in different types of linemen for workouts. We literally signed Billy Price to our practice squad, like the bus center from 3 years ago, because we're that desperate. But we're bringing in a bunch of guards to help out something, because our right side is definitely the weaker side right now. I mean, Colton Miller is probably our best offensive lineman, and that could already speak for itself in one nature. So I mean, yeah, we have our work cut out for us. But I mean, if you really look at some of the throws Derek Carr had, they're actually really like I think he played for what he completed. I mean, they look really good. Um, there were a couple plays I saw on Twitter, since I don't have NFL Plus, so I can't really look at the all 22, but there's some really nice throws he had that really kind of make you excited. Devontae getting open a lot is kind of that piece that we missed last year, that superstar. Um, but again, at the end of the day, it just didn't look like Derek Carr. He wasn't spreading the ball as he usually did. You kind of forgot that we had the highest paid tight end in the league in Waller, and Hunter Renfrow, one of the best slot receivers. So I mean, no reactions, but I feel like we're still fine. I still personally think we'll make the playoffs. I mean, it was a damn Chargers, and they're predicted. Everyone thinks that they're going to go far. Even some people have them winning the AFC West. And we lost to them by a touchdown and almost won the game if Derek Carr didn't get. I mean, yeah, Khalil Mack had an amazing game, and we're just able to keep getting after it. So I mean, hey, we're a drive away, and I've seen Derek Carr make those drives thousands of times, and we drive away and we almost beat them. So I mean, I can't be mad, but yeah, I mean the defense looked better. Hiring Patrick Graham in the offseason, I think, was one of our better moves to be your DC, and it proved. I think even with the question marks at linebacker and our DB core, our interior defensive line is suspect. I mean, it didn't look bad. Yeah, we had our moments, but I mean, we played Justin Herbert. What can we say? So I mean, I'm definitely excited. I still have my hope this season. Not too disappointed. Obviously, I hate the Chargers. I wanted to beat the Chargers, but I mean, we go against the sorry Cardinals this week. So I mean, I think we're going to be 1-1, and I still think that this team is a playoff caliber team. Now, I don't think we win the AFC West, but I think we easily make the wild card if Derek Carr can just may have better decision making. So I mean, that's kind of how I feel about it. But yeah, can't be mad, can't be
so,
sad.
so, question for you: what were your, I guess, you said make the playoffs or wild card for Raiders. What was your like? Did you have like a record prediction at all? And has that changed since week one?
I don't have a record prediction, but I could do. I can do it real quick, honestly, live on air. So we're all on right now. We play the Cardinals, Titans, and Broncos, 3-1. We play the Chiefs in Kansas City. We always suck there, 3-2. Then we play the Texans, Saints, and Jaguars, 6-2. Yeah,
That's a hot one.
man, ratio. We play the Colts. Matt Ryan's wash, 7-2. We play the Broncos at Denver. I'll give us a loss, 7-3. Seahawks, 8-3. Chargers and Rams. God, uh, for my Coke, I know we'll just make them both losses for the fun of it. 8-5. Patriots, Steelers in Pittsburgh. They will beat the Patriots at home, so it's 9-5. Out Steelers. Oh, screw it. 10-5. 49ers 11-5. It just depends how like uh whatever his name is goes, and then we probably lose to the Chiefs again. 11-6. So I mean, I have us around 11 or 10 wins because you can kind of throw up, maybe one of the games like maybe we lose to the Saints, maybe we lose to like the Patriots or Steelers or like 49ers, but I have us around 11 or 10 wins, and I still think we have 11 or 10 wins. Now it kind of depends the rest of the AFC since the AFC's stacked this year, but that's kind of where I see us around. Um, I think once we get hot, I think we'll definitely start winning more games. Like these next three games are all winnable. I mean, we have home against Cardinals who look shaky. The Titans lost the Giants, and I feel like that's winnable. Um, and we have a Broncos in Vegas. So I mean, those are all three games that I think we could win. So I mean, the schedule is kind of harder towards the second half of the season. I mean, you have the Chargers, Rams, Patriots, Steelers, Niners, Chiefs in a row. I mean, some of those teams aren't as good as, they used to be, but I mean, still playing the Steelers in Pittsburgh is always hard. The Patriots always come prepared, and then, the Niners have, you know, a good running game and still a pretty decent defense. So, I mean, that's not an easy game whatsoever. But I mean, yeah, I think regardless, I see us at 10 or 11 wins, even after yesterday, or 2 days ago. No, yeah, 3 days ago, whatever it was.
So I think this will probably be a good question to you as well. The Monday night game, Broncos Seahawks. Russ making his return to Seattle. And the Broncos coaching staff, granted, I'm not a football know it all, but that coaching was pretty awful last night. It's 4th and 5, I believe, with like 40 something seconds left. Um, uh, were they down by 1 point, right? One?
They're down by 1 point, yes, 16-17.
Yeah, and it was 40 seconds left. Like the clock keeps ticking, ticking, ticking. I think all the way down to like 20 something seconds, and they finally call a timeout. And they elect to go for a 64-yarder instead of letting Russ go for it, because obviously a 64-yarder is not great field goal position. But hey, they went for it. Obviously, it was a miss and they lost. Pretty disappointing game, but Gino was a man of the hour. Shout out to Gino. But just giving my thoughts, I think it was a pretty bad look. The first year Bronco coach, I think his name's Nathaniel Hackett or something. And I saw his press conference yesterday, and he's like, looking back at it, I think we probably should have gone for it. I'm like, bro, that's not. Yes, you should have gone for it, but I just don't think that's the right thing to say after a pretty bad loss that reflects back on the coaching staff. I just think you move on at that point. I feel like a day or two later after the game, you come out and say, "Yeah, I think we should have gone for it." Actually, I feel like that just angers your fan base even more. But hey, that's just me. The Broncos, they looked pretty iffy from my point of view. We'll get to Daniel's take in a second, but yeah, I think the main thing that stood out to me, even though he's kind of been a meme in our fan group, Geno Smith looked absolutely insane. He looked really good in his first game as a starter for Seattle, and I think he started like 15 of 15 or 16 of 16 on completions, which is obviously pretty good, and had a couple touchdowns thrown in there. He was absolutely lacing it out there. You love to see it. Gino is just a dog. He has that dog in him. I know me and Ryan see it in him, and absolutely showed Denver up. He gave them all he had, and all I can say is go Gino. Rest of the year, I believe in him, and he's gonna take Seattle to big places this year. Heard it here first.
So we'll first start off with Daniel Hackett's decision. Good old OC of the Packers last year. Very some people I feel like had, you know, their thoughts about him getting hired for a coaching job, and it looked bad. Um, Not only that decision, I mean, you had 50 seconds. Okay, we'll go through the decision first. 50 seconds on the clock, and you try to run a no huddle fourth down play, and you have three timeouts, and you're on like the 50. You've three timeouts. Like it doesn't matter. Like you can literally get to the 30 with one play and make it winnable for your kicker. And you have McManus who has the leg, right? But he just hasn't made those length of 60-yard kicks in his career. I don't think he's made one once, but he has the leg. So I mean, I just don't get like what you're trying to do. I mean, you can clearly see when they're lining up, Cortland Sutton has no idea what he's doing. Like the receivers are just looking at Russ confused. It's like I don't know, man. If you just I don't know, it's a coaching debut. Like not gonna write him off, but it looks shaky. That's not what you want to see as a Broncos or fan or player even. I mean, just take the timeout. Maybe he didn't know he had three timeout. Like he had to. Like there has to be someone in your ear telling you like you have three timeouts. I just want to know what the other coaches were telling him because like obviously there's people like who literally are in charge of like clock management and like for coaches and stuff. I feel like or I've heard at least that some people have that in their ears saying like, oh, you have this amount of timeouts. Like here's the time. Like I feel like every NFL coach has that, and it's just really bad by him. And to come out the next day and say, yeah, we should have gone for it. Like no, no, like come on, like of course you should have gone for it. Like it's obvious. Like it's just whatever. But for the Broncos in a whole, Wilson looked like he struggled in Hackett's offense. Wilson did not look like the normal Russell Wilson that we are used to. But I think the Broncos will look better for weeks to come. I mean, I don't think anyone should write him off yet. It was just the first game, and it was the most emotional game for their starting quarterback. Going back to Seattle is not easy. Hearing boos. I mean, obviously he loved that place, played and competed in that place for how many years? And you go back and you just hear everyone booming your name. So I mean, definitely not the greatest thing, and obviously was probably very hard for him. But now you get to refocus up, lock back in. Your most emotional game was off, and now you have a 17 game season to kind of regain and win some games. But overall, I mean, like we besides the offense and the fumbles and all that, I mean, those are just things that kind of out of Russ's control. I mean, the defense it didn't look good for the Broncos. I think that was the worst we've kind of seen the Broncos defense in a while. And I'll give respect to Geno Smith, but I mean, it just you look back and I kind of remember like half of his throws were wide open. Like There are just wide open receivers down the field. Like I don't know what happened or what kind of things are happening, but I mean they're still talented receivers in DK and Lockett, but it just felt like it was too easy for Geno at times, too easy for the Broncos to move the ball. I mean, the Seahawks to move the ball. So I mean, there has to. We knew that the Broncos defense has slowly declined from that 2015 defense, but I mean, I think this is going to be the worst year for that defense, and we're going to kind of see things change with how the Broncos always had the defense, didn't have the offense. So this year they might have the offense, and the defense is going to kind of be the problem now. So definitely gonna have to see what happens, but I think everyone is kind of overreacting a little bit. I think the coach just had a little bit of just kind of freaked out on his first kind of win. It looks bad. I mean, I even think it looks horrible, but I think the Broncos will be fine. The Seahawks, they're gonna be bad as everyone thought. It was just the first week when they literally should have lost that game if the Broncos could hold on to the ball in the red zone. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Wilson will look better. Seahawks will decline very fast. Because Geno, like after watching Geno when he first got drafted in 2014, Geno is not that guy, respectfully. He will not put up these numbers every single week.
Oh,
Like the stupid quote he did, and like he's like,
yeah, that quote
they
is
tried to
so
write me
hard.
off.
It's
I didn't
so
write
hard.
back. Like, dude, I want to interview you in 3 weeks and say what happened. If he keeps it up and
Gonna
what
be
like
top of the division. That's where he's gonna
they should enjoy it. They're top of the division for about
be.
2 weeks. But I
uh,
mean, that's just kind of where I'm at with Gino. I don't think he's gonna do anything after that.
you know. So this is probably the last thing I have football wise, but is there any team to you that stands out from the rest as like a favorite to win it all so far?
Bills. The Bills definitely from week one have stood out in AFC at least. Um, the defense looks great with Von Miller. They're already a good defense, and their one thing was pass rush, and Von Miller really showed out. Josh Allen looks like he really wants it this year. He wants a win. He wants to win a Super Bowl. The guy's stiff arming cornerbacks, throwing 50-yard touchdowns, running the ball, making the right reads. It's just everything you want out of your quarterback, he is doing, and it's looking good. The Bills are really standing out for me. On the NFC side of things, um, I don't really know. There's no one who really stood out for me. Um, and Philadelphia looked shaky with, their performance. The Rams looked obviously bad. I'd say the boring answer to me would be the Bucks. I mean, Brady looked good for, still being as old as he is. Throw to Julio was really nice. And always with Brady, he makes good couple of reads, and there's always those couple in the game that you just question, like, why did he throw that? But the Bucks look good. Their defense, looks good. Um, Leonard Fournette looks good, and I think they're probably people's favorites to come out of the NFC. But those are kind of my two favorites after week one, basing it off of one performance. But those two definitely were kind of the two that stood out to me.
And then were there any teams that were really disappointing? I know the Rams are obviously really bad, but were there any other teams that looked pretty bad that you didn't expect to look so bad in their first game?
Yeah, so for me it's definitely I have two. The first one is going to be the Cardinals. They looked really bad, obviously. Losing 40, they gave up 44 something points to the Chiefs. That is just not acceptable. Ye- I, I wasn't too high on the Cardinals, but just to get blown out that bad first week, definitely not looking good so far. Um, Kyler didn't look good. The defense looked atrocious, as I already said, and For a team that was kind of hoping to make a run, I mean, you look at their offseason, and I just don't feel like they got better. I don't feel like they made too many crazy changes, and I wasn't too high on Kyler regardless this offseason, and he kind of just proved it to me more. I feel like he'll still have his fair share of good games, fair share of good performances this season, but I just, sorry, Lee and Jackson, but Kyler is not your guy if you're gonna make a playoff run or make a Super Bowl. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what else you have to see, but just turn off the bias and look at it. He's not good.
Ugh.
He simply is not good in my opinion. And maybe I'm completely wrong, but I just don't think he's good. But disappointing teams with Cardinals. Cardinals are already in a weird position. I don't really know where to rank them in the NFC West. I mean, you have the Rams, the Niners, obviously, are it's kind of their ranking is depending on Trey Lance's performance. And then you have an NFC that's kind of wide open, in my opinion. I mean, there's no clear like number one. I mean, maybe with the Bucks, but you know, I look at the NFC right now. You have the Packers, who obviously are questionable coming into the season. The Cowboys are questionable with Dak going down so early. I mean, the Saints, respectfully, they looked really bad against the Falcons at time to times. Obviously, kind of got bailed out. Eagles almost lost to the Lions, but I mean, they look okay. Um, I mean, Niners look shaky, like I said. I mean, lost. I mean, I would say those field conditions are probably the worst I've ever seen out of an NFL field, but still, I mean, NFC just doesn't really have that clear-cut winner, and I don't even think the Cards probably will make the playoffs or how kind of weak other divisions are in the NFC, but um, they just don't impress me at all as a team. But for AFC, it's definitely going to be the Bengals. Um, you know, not even. I mean, they definitely played good. I mean, almost won that game. But I mean, Evan McPherson missing easy field goals in OT, Joe Burrow throwing 4 interceptions. I mean, and even fumbling, I think once. Five total turnovers for one of the best young QBs in the league. So I mean, obviously it's the first week, and I'm just going off of the first week. But that team definitely disappointed. Um, Definitely, honestly, only one player. I mean, Joe Burrow disappointed, and you don't want to see that, obviously. But it's only the first week. I'm not going to overreact too hard, but that's probably just the one team that people had higher expectations for in the AFC, and they just kind of blew it. So yeah, those are kind of my two disappointing teams for first week.
Alrighty, so that was our first little NFL segment. I'm sure we'll talk more throughout the season, but moving on to some NBA talk. As I mentioned earlier in the show, we are kind of in the dog days of stuff. Um, Kind of just waiting for preseason to happen at this point, training camp to get underway. Um, if anything were to happen, it would be to Mr. Russell Westbrook, but we've talked about him way too many times, so I don't want to talk about Russ anymore. He disappoints me greatly, but I found this Bleacher Report article where it features um, the biggest question mark about every team's um, future. So we'll try to get through as many as we can before our time is up. But kicking it off first, going in order, the Atlanta Hawks. Is there a path to championship contention? I'm just going to come out and say it. I'll say no. Definitely not. At least not this year. The East, we've talked about it in the past couple of shows. The East is looking really good this year. You just have way too many top dogs. You have Boston, Milwaukee, Philly. That's expected to take a pretty big leap this year. You have Miami still there. Toronto is going to be a pretty good team. Chicago, not many people are high on. Brooklyn's probably going to be thrown in there as well. Cleveland, we both of us are pretty high on the Cavs. So I just don't view the Hawks as a team with a lot of depth or star power, I guess is the right term, against these other teams. Like you have Embiid and Harden, Giannis and Middleton, um, Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, and Levine, DeMar. But who knows how it's going to hold up for him this year. Lonzo is still expected to be missing time, which is pretty concerning for his knee. But you have Jimmy Butler and Bam, Lowry. You're hoping takes a somewhat of a leap because last year he was just playing out awful. But yeah, I just view all these other top dogs of the East just better depth, better star power than the Hawks. I think they're heading in the right direction after a pretty lackluster start. They put it together, finished with 43-39 record. They were the eighth spot in the East. They got, I believe, swept by the Heat, or maybe they got one game, but they got DeJounte. I'm still not too high on that fit, but we'll see how it works out this year. But with adding a new guard into the equation with a ball dominant player like Trae Young, I don't think that propels you into contention this year. And asking if there's a path, I don't know if there's a path if those teams that I mentioned have those guys moving forward for the next couple of years. But that's kind of my view on the Hawks.
So it's like saying like, do you think they have a route to the championship
Yeah.
like the Hawks? Yeah, no chance. Um, I mean, they're they're a playoff team. I feel like obviously, or at least a play-in team, top 10 in the East. I think that's obviously kind of there for them. But like, just kind of like what you're saying. I mean, there's just you look at the East and you look at the top teams, and you don't, or you think about like the top seeds and the top people coming out, and you don't think Hawks.
Yeah.
Like, it's just they're just not. They don't have the depth. You, there's so many question marks with their, duo of Murray and um, Young. Who's going to take up the ball? Who is one of them going to be good off ball? Like, just all those simple questions. And you just look at their roster and you look at other rosters and you're like, oh, that team's better. Like, that's just as simple as it gets. I mean, the Hawks should not be anywhere near the championship, and if they do, that means the rest of the East like tore their ACL or tore their Achilles somehow. So yeah, I think it's kind of simple with the Hawks. I just don't see a route, and basically kind of what you said. I mean, every other team that's at the top has a better roster on paper, unless only way I can see them making it is Trey and Murray have like literally godlike seasons and are just unstoppable, but that's probably not going to happen. So Hawks don't have a chance.
All right, moving on to the Boston Celtics. Can the Jays hit an even higher gear? Um, Personally, probably. They're still very young. Making the finals last year was a pretty huge step. Jason Tatum kind of struggled in the finals, though. It was kind of just Jalen Brown keeping that team afloat. If Tatum and Brown both play pretty decent efficiency wise, you could argue that they have a better chance at winning that title, but I think Boston's gotten a lot better. Added Gallinari, which got injured, which is very unfortunate, but I think he should be back sometime during the year, which I think he'll be key for their depth. They got Malcolm Brogdon and pretty much of a fleece. They just loaded off a bunch of unwanted players from their roster, so I think Brogdon will be a pretty key piece. Granted, if he's healthy, I believe he'll be their sixth man heading into the year, so he'll be key for their bench as well. Yeah, their team's just really rounded out. They got better. I Going back to the question, I do think they can hit a higher gear because just of their youth, they still have a lot of developing to do. Jason Tatum showed it in the finals that he still has some growing up to do. Um, but if they're just better efficiency wise, I think they're just going to be a really good team. They could very well end up back in the finals. Their defense is really good as well. Um, Ime Udoka is a really good coach. He really gets those guys to play hard. It's just their offense can get a little stagnant at times. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown ISOs from time to time, but if they really lock in and focus in on getting back to the finals, I definitely do see these guys hitting a higher gear. I think Jaylen Brown will probably be even more motivated hearing his name being in trade rumors. I know he was pretty upset about that, but yeah, I definitely do see the Celtics hitting a higher gear with these two forwards. I think they're really good. They still have a lot more growing to do, and I think they'll become even better. Will it lead to a championship? I'm not sure, but I do think they have a pretty good chance at it. It's just the West has gone pretty good, assuming health wise everybody's relatively healthy. So if they make it to the finals, they'll probably play a pretty hard team. So we'll see, but I can definitely see the Celtics getting back to the finals if everything lines up correctly, and hopefully Jason and Jalen can hit that higher gear, which I think they can.
Um, so, didn't they traded for yeah, they traded for Brogdon, right?
Yeah.
So, um, I think they can hit a higher gear. I mean, how much higher can you go than the finals? Um, but I still think that this team will have repeated success. Like you said, they believe in their coach and they played hard for him last season, and I feel like that doesn't change, obviously. And I think with Tatum and Jalen experiencing that, loss and, obviously more for Tatum playing that bad and not playing good, I feel that's definitely good motivating factors. So I feel like this season they kind of played better in the regular season. At the beginning, obviously, they played really well towards the end last year, but I think they come off a little bit hotter, a little bit showing that they're a contender. But um, like if they make it out of the East, it obviously will be hard again. They obviously played, really hard series last year, but if they were to make it out, I think we just want to see just more of the consistency from that duo. Um, that's kind of it. I mean, if they play consistent, not even like playing well every game, but just the shooting and the decision making and playing defense, all that. It looked like last year with Tatum in the finals, they were just he just looked really bad consistency wise. There were a couple good shots that he'd hit, but when it came down to the fourth quarter, I mean, he just kind of came non-existent. You forgot he was there. So I mean, you just kind of want to see that change, obviously, because we know that he can be that guy who you can rely on towards the end of the games. But I don't know if it was just pressure or if it was you know, just him being in the finals for the first time. But who knows? But when you get a player like Brogdon, I think that obviously makes your team better. And I'm kind of excited to see where the Celtics go and if they can repeat again in the finals. Or repeat making the finals, it should definitely be cool. But um, can they, hit a higher gear? Yes, I think with getting Brogdon, um, and I think with Tatum and Brown having a full off season of depression of losing and getting better, I think they definitely can be better next year. And win a finals. I don't think they win a finals. Like you said, I mean, the West is just better in my opinion than the East at the moment. So, but all we kind of ask for is just make it more competitive. And if they win one, then they'll surprise everyone. And if they lose again, I don't know kind of what happens there, but we'll have to see. But yeah, I think the Celtics definitely will look better next year.
Moving on to the circus team, the Brooklyn Nets. Will off-season distraction, or sorry, will off-court distractions torpedo this team? Now, Brooklyn has kind of just been a team that has never put anything together. Um, they've they threw away all their depth to get these two guys, and James Harden. Obviously, that didn't pan out. He had this whole off-season drama going on, so I think it's a very valid question to ask if this team is really going to put it together this year. Still very odd to me that Kevin Durant just suddenly backs off his trade demand, which I'm still a little confused on that. But it's Kevin Durant. He's a very special guy. Uh, Obviously, you still have Kyrie there. Contract year. You would expect Kyrie to be bought in because he wants to make a payday next off season, which I think relatively he'll be bought in. You never know for sure because Kyrie Irving. Uh, we've said it before. This off season, this is probably the best team that the Nets have had around Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I feel like it's just up to those two guys to just lead this team to where they want it to go. I think if these two guys are locked in, sky's the limit. You have two really good players. My favorite point guard in the league, in my opinion. Kevin Durant, who's viewed as one of the top players in the league. With those two guys, they're a really dangerous duo. It's just when when and if they're on the court. Kyrie, it's more off the court stuff. KD, it's more injury stuff. So I think if they're just able to just be healthy and be mentally stable, I think they'll be just fine. I think they can make some noise in the East. I think there's just always a high possibility of off-court distractions. I think this year it's more 50-50. I don't know if there's a for sure answer. But if that stuff gets in the way, I think it definitely will torpedo this team because without one of those guys, your team's just not as good as it is. The depth is good, don't get me wrong, but if one of your top guys is missing, I just don't know if there's enough depth to pick up that kind of slack with one of those great players missing time. But it'll be interesting to see. I just don't know if those distractions will happen this year. It's a very high possibility it will because Kyrie entering a contract year and KD coming off a trade demand. So I think there's a very high possibility. But again, there could be a world where they just put aside their differences and move forward and trying to win a championship, which they've been trying to do for a couple years now. So we'll see how it looks on the court. But yeah, that's kind of just my view on the Nets.
Yeah, so uh, this team is very, very interesting. Very definitely, obviously, you still kind of believe in them. I mean, they still have two of the biggest stars in the league. It's everything that leads up to it. The trade rumors, Katie not wanting to play there, magically wants to play here now. Um, the depth just doesn't look that good. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, like we said, I remember we said that we don't view them as like the top four seed in the East. We don't view them as one of the top teams. I just even if Katie and Kyrie fully commit to the season and play like they want to win a championship, one of them is bound to get injured, or Kyrie's bound to go on a spiritual journey and just not play at all. So, um, I just don't like this team. The tensions have to be high with Steve Nash and KD. I mean, the guy literally was like, I don't want to play with you anymore, so trade me, or he go, like you go or I go. Um, so I feel like, the role players obviously just are okay, but not that good. Um, and overall, it's just I don't know. It's just I just don't see that this team will really amount to anything or really succeed with anything. So, what was the question again? Like just the full question, the article.
Will off court distractions torpedo this team?
What is what does
Kind of,
torpedo mean?
kind of just like, will the distractions, like
Oh,
the whole Kyrie KD thing,
yeah.
will it kind of just destroy the team in a sense, like record
That they
wise?
say that. I would say torpedo. Yes, I fully believe it. I mean, with all this off-season drama, you can't come into the next season, even if like not even like this Kyrie and Katie as a teammate of them, like that they don't want to be there. You know that they don't want to like they both request trades. Like they didn't want to like Kyrie would probably rather be in LA. Katie will probably rather be in like one of his teams listed, like the Celtics or the Sixers. Like they don't want to be there. So I mean, obviously they have to come in and try and do these things, but I just think that the team chemistry will be off all season, and I just don't see that they'll make a deep run in the playoffs. So that's just kind of my take on the Nets. And yes, they will torpedo because of the off season drama.
All
Uh,
right. All right. So moving on to the Charlotte Hornets. Can they find a co-star for LaMelo Ball? Now the Hornets are kind of in a weird spot to me. I feel like they've just been mediocre for the longest time. And I feel like last year they were starting to turn a corner with Miles Bridges and company, but Miles Bridges went a little AWOL this offseason. So those things kind of went awry. So Miles Bridges is, I hope, not on the team anymore, but currently still a free agent at this moment in time. That kind of just leaves LaMelo without like a second guy. I feel like Miles Bridges was kind of that second guy. Um, Gordon Hayward is always injured. Terry Rozier is solid, but I don't know if he's a co-star to LaMelo. Um, so I think this year the Hornets are probably going to be pretty bad. Um, I think missing Miles Bridges is going to be a pretty huge gap in their team. We'll see how the rest of the team plays, but not much of a supporting cast behind LaMelo. I'm kind of just viewing this as a future thing. Will they find a co-star? I feel like if they were, it'd probably be through the draft because honestly, I don't know who's going to be willing to sign with the Hornets in free agency. Um, Obviously, LaMelo is a pretty big selling point, but just not much around him at this point in time to kind of just sell somebody on the Hornets and coming to sign there. I think it's kind of just going to be a drafting process for them to find that co-star. Will it happen? I'll go on the limb and say yes. I think having a player like LaMelo, he's really good and he's taken leaps every single year. I think he'll be really good this year as well. I think they'll find a co-star for him. If they don't, that's going to be pretty bad. But Mitch Kupchak is a man full of magic. We've seen it in Lakerland, not the right magic though. So
oh wow.
we'll see. I I believe in Mitch. I think he'll figure something out for LaMelo, but most likely, I think it will come through draft.
Um. So, you know, co-star for Lamelo. Right now on the roster, obviously there's no co-star.
Yeah,
Probably your second best player is who Hayward. Um,
yikes.
I don't know the Hornets roster to heart, but Um, all I can really think is Hayward. If there's another up and coming player, my fault. But I mean, outside of that, and there's no one else that really kind of gives you co-star potential. The question is, can they find one?
Yeah.
I'd I'd say yes. They definitely could find one, whether that be through trade, free agency, or obviously the draft. I feel like another player would want to come play with LaMelo, and who that would be, who knows? But I think finding, him a dominant center would definitely be kind of the way to go. Obviously, we've known that the Hornets have struggled at that position the past couple of years. So I feel like with his passing and his already playmaking ability, having that center would definitely be the right fit. I definitely don't think they should take the Hawks route and go get another star like guard. I don't think that they need that. Maybe even a forward, maybe even like I think a forward would also work out for them. Just somewhere that is not another guard because I think Lamelo has to have the ball in his hands for as many possessions as they can. I mean, not being, him being selfish or anything, but obviously that offense runs better when he's feeling it, when he has the ball in his hands. So um, that is something that they should really prioritize. Mitch, I know you got a brain. I saw two of the best signings I've ever seen when you were at
We
the
sure
Lakers.
he
So
has a brain though.
I don't know, man, but um, you know, redeem for what you cursed the franchise of the Lakers with. I believe you can really make the Hornets a so sorry. But
Whoa.
but no, all serious, I feel like people should want to come play with LaMelo. I mean, I think he's shown that he can definitely play in this league, and the Hornets have shown that they have potential. Their recent draft picks have definitely been shown potential and shown that this future could be bright. Hornets are definitely one of the teams that I kind of excited to see what happens in the next 5 years. They could either be, maybe a top seed in the East, obviously with players getting older and, these top teams are already kind of quote unquote old and, we could see them rise up or, Mitch can completely mess it up and just bring the Hornets to worse than we see him now. But um no, I think they definitely could find a co-star through for LaMelo. How? I don't really know how. I think through free agency, I'll say. I'll be my guess. I think maybe in the next couple of years they'll get that big signing that every team wants. I don't know I don't know about trade. I don't really know about their trade, what they can to give away. But and obviously I don't think that they'll get something crazy through the draft. Maybe they will, but I think they get something with the free agency. I think they convince, a center to come here and, obviously finally be that piece that they've been missing. But, sooner or it sooner or later they will get the co-star for LaMelo.
All right. We can probably do one more. The Chicago Bulls. How bad is Lonzo's knee? It was reported, I want to say a couple weeks ago, that Lonzo is expected to miss training camp and not um, start the beginning of the season, which I feel like he's been out for a long time with that knee problem, and it seems like it isn't going away. We saw with Lonzo and Caruso being those two guards that they picked up in last offseason. Once they missed time, their whole season went downhill. Um, so I think those two guards both need to be healthy and in the lineup, but it's more focused on Lonzo. He's just been injured a lot of the time in his career. We've seen it in LA, in New Orleans, and now in Chicago. So Lonzo, when he is healthy, he's a really good player, 3-and-D guard. He provides a huge boost for the Bulls, and you saw it in flashes. In the preseason when they played, I watched their games full through because of how just fun their team was to see Lonzo flying up and down the court. playing great defense, hitting his threes. I love Lonzo as a player. He's evolved since leaving LA, which you love to see. I missed Frozo though. Those were great times in
Wow.
Lakerland, but and LeBronzo. So I wish all the best for Lonzo, but I think if the Bulls are missing him for I don't know how long into the season, but I think they need him for probably like around the 30 game mark because that's when games really start to count and weigh heavily. So hopefully it's not too far into the season that he's missing time, but obviously not a great sign that he's missing training camp and beginning of the year.
So I don't even like the Bulls regardless of Lonzo being there or not. But um obviously they're a better team with Lonzo there. I think last year you could definitely see that with Lonzo at the helm, it looked a lot better. Um and we're just what how long he was out last season too, and it's kind of gone through the entire off season, right? If I remember.
Yeah, I forget when exactly,
Yeah.
but he missed a good chunk. I think like the back end of the season.
Yeah, so this is definitely kind of something concerning now. Obviously, as a Bulls fan and Bulls front office, um, I, no, I don't even know like fully like what happened to him, but he's always had like these kind of knee issues for the most part of his career. So you kind of have to start asking the question of like, how much longer do we give him? Honestly, like they're gonna need him, and if he can't be healthy, this is obviously a bigger problem, more with, kind of wasting a roster spot on him, honestly. I mean, I feel like Lonzo's never been healthy. I mean, I think Matt can attest on the Lakers. I felt like he got hurt like every other week. Um, and now, I mean, on the Bulls, he can't stay healthy. So, I mean, it's definitely raising question marks, but they're gonna need him, like you said, mid-season is kind of when you really kind of got to show that you're a playoff team. Um, and they need Lonzo. They need Lonzo being that facilitator. They need Lonzo being that playmaker. They need him for his, defensive side, and they don't have that. It's obviously a big blow. So you kind of have to pray that he's getting healthy and getting along to being ready to play. And however long it takes, I mean, you don't want it to take even I think the Bulls are a playoff team. So even if you can come back towards the second half of the season, the later half of the season, that's still fine. You want them fresh for the playoffs, obviously. That'd be better for you. But yeah, they're gonna really need to start hoping and praying that this guy could come back because they're a better team with him. So obviously, so yeah, it kind of sucks that he's been out for what 6 months, 8 months now, but hopefully he'll come back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it says here he was out since mid January with a torn meniscus, so it's definitely been a long time. So hopefully Alonzo gets better. Um, Laker legend. So hoping for the best for him. So that will do it for this episode. We'll pick up on this list on this article probably next episode. But yeah, we're in the dog days of the NBA. Hopefully can power through these next couple of weeks before preseason and we can talk about what we see in preseason basketball. But for now, we have the NFL. The NFL has been exciting and it's only been 1 week, so we'll talk more about the NFL as the weeks goes on. But yeah, thank you guys for listening to this episode. If you made it this far, greatly appreciate it. Follow us on our socials at the Basketball Maestros on Instagram and TikTok, and follow us on YouTube as well. If you're a new listener, we are the Basketball Maestros. We go live on the University Pulse every Friday, 4 to 5. So be sure to check us out and support us. But yeah, that will do it for this episode, and we'll see you next Friday. Take care.